This is Bryan Kohberger, the accused killer of 4 college students, as he made his way into a Pennsylvania courtroom. He waived his extradition hearing. He will be on his way back to Idaho sometime over the course of the next several days.
Hey guys, welcome back to True Crime with Shannon, where I cover missing persons, unsolved cases, crime news, and more. Well, we got another episode of the Idaho unalivings update today on the horizon. But before I get to that, let me show you guys today's missing persons poster. Today's missing person is Vanessa Henderson. She is missing out of, it looks like, Montgomery County. Looks like she's 25 years old. She was last seen, so that's today, Tuesday, January 3rd, at approximately 11 a.m. in the 13700 block of Trail Street. She was driving a silver 2020 Kia Sportage with Maryland tags, and it shows 8FC 2301. She's described as 5'7", 125 pounds, brown eyes, and black hair. If you have any information on Vanessa Henderson, you're asked to call the Montgomery County Police non-emergency number at 301-279-8000, and that is, it looks like, a 24-hour line, so you can call it at any time. So if you have any information on Vanessa, please do contact the authorities. So this afternoon, actually in the last, couple hours here, because I worked till 5 p.m. Eastern today, the Idaho suspect, Bryan Kohberger, appeared in court, and he waived his extradition. He did all the paperwork, and now Idaho gets to decide how they're going to get him to Idaho from Pennsylvania. So here is the update from News Nation on that. The man accused of unaliving 4 University of Idaho students appeared in court Tuesday, where he waived extradition. Alleged unaliver Bryan Kohberger, 28, told the judge he is not on any medication that would impact his making the decision. He is expected to be sent to Idaho within 10 days. So a lot of folks were thinking they were going to fly him out tonight. And there was a presser like an hour after all this, little less than an hour by the time he got out of the court. And they're stating that that's not necessarily the case. They would find it hard to believe that they're going to be able to get him out tonight. So maybe tomorrow or Thursday. Kohberger is accused of fatally stabbing 4 students: Kaylee Gonzalez, 21, Madison Mogan, 21, Xander Kerdoodle, 20, and Ethan Chapman, 20. Kohberger was arrested in Scranton, Pennsylvania on Friday and has been held at Monroe County Correctional Facility, where he awaits extradition. Kohberger nodded to his family seated in the front row. His mother cried as his sister comforted her. Yeah, they were not allowed cameras in the courtroom. There was one camera sitting at the door. He would come in and out of the courtroom, and according to apparently Pennsylvania, they're not allowed to have recording devices inside the courtroom. Once Kohberger is on the ground in Idaho, that is when Idaho state law allows the court to unseal the probable cause affidavit, which will have an abundance of information about what led to Kohberger's arrest. Kohberger is expected to be brought to the Latta County Jail in Moscow, Idaho, less than 2 miles away from the crime on November 13th. Once he gets here, he'll have an initial appearance with our magistrate. They'll deal with issues such as making sure competent counsel is representing him, and the case will be scheduled for hearing, said Latta County Prosecutor Bill Thompson. So at this point, the ball is rolling. We have him He signed the paperwork. He's claiming that he's anxious to prove his innocence. He's anxious to prove that he didn't have anything to do with this crime. So they're showing here, let's check out this video, what the extradition means for those that are less familiar with it. And it's a good video that News Nation has put up here.
Let's take a deeper look into the extradition process, what we can expect in court today. For that, I want to bring in Dave Ehrenberg, State Attorney for Palm Beach County, Florida. It's good to see you. Good morning.
Good morning, Natasha. Good to be with you.
Thank you. Kohberger's state-appointed attorney has indicated that his client does plan to waive extradition, calling it just a formality proceeding. What reasons, if any, would there be for Kohberger to fight extradition?
And Natasha, it's really difficult to fight extradition. I mean, there is evidence in the probable cause affidavit that will be made public, and that will set forth the grounds that police have to make the arrest. Remember, you don't need to prove beyond a reasonable doubt to arrest someone. All you need is probable cause. It's a relatively low burden, and to fight extradition and to maintain your innocence is almost impossible. That's why he's waiving it. He's going to play this out back in Idaho, where he will profess his innocence. He'll be assigned a public defender, and that's when it's game on. But today is a formality. He will be extradited, and it's not going to be that much drama today.
And you mentioned the bar is pretty low. What does need to be proven in order for the extradition to happen?
Oh, well, there are compacts amongst the states that have pretty much automatic extradition. I mean, each state has certain rules, but you would have to show that this was a wrongful arrest. You'd have to show there was some maybe fraud or deception. And there's none of that even being alleged here. You have a probable cause affidavit that sets forth the grounds. And so there are rules in place in each state that make it pretty much automatic to send suspects back to other states, barring some unusual circumstance. But nothing has been alleged here to show that there was police misconduct or that you have a completely innocent person or anything like that. He's going to fight this out back in Idaho.
If successful, how soon do you expect he would be brought to Idaho? And what is your sense? What would make the most sense in terms of his transport back to Idaho?
I think they'll fly him back. Too many bad things can happen if you try to drive someone across the country. It's such a long distance. He'll be escorted by federal officials. They don't want to leave anything to chance. There's cooperation with state officials, but you have U.S. Marshals and FBI involved in such a high-profile case. You see in the movies like The Fugitive and all these other things that things can go wrong when you transport prisoners, but usually that's just Hollywood. They're going to escort him probably in the air. They're going to take him right to the courthouse to get booked, and then he will start fighting his charges back in Idaho. Now, the big question to me is who's going to defend him? The public defender's office back in Idaho, where he will be taken, has a very small office. They're conflicted. It looks like there's conflicts there. And what happens is they have private attorneys doing the work of the public defender, but there are so many conflicts there that they're down to maybe one or two lawyers who could possibly represent him. He will find a public defender through a private lawyer, but it's not going to be as easy as you would in a bigger jurisdiction.
I want to see if we have time for two quick questions. First of all, very quickly, how soon would you expect that he would actually make that journey and be extradited?
I think it'll happen almost immediately. There's no reason to make this process any longer than it already has. The families have already been so frustrated why it took so long to make an arrest. Looks like he was stopped twice in the state of Indiana in that white Hyundai, and yet he wasn't taken into custody. So they're going to move on this expeditiously.
Okay. And we, really have gotten a sense through this coverage and our correspondence on the ground, how tightly knit, how small this community is, to the extent that in Moscow, there are 4 or 5 Uber drivers serving the entire area. Because of the nature of the nature of this case, how high profile it has become. In your opinion, what are the chances of a change of venue if this does go to trial?
Well, I think in this type of case, because it's a small community, everyone knows about it, and people may have already had their opinions drawn, that it could be moved to Boise, for example, a big city within Idaho. But let me tell you this, in my experience as a prosecutor, even when you have high-profile cases, you can find jurors who will keep an open mind. It's not that the juror has heard about the case, it's whether or not they could set aside their feelings and be objective. But still, because it's a small community here, I think there's a pretty decent chance it will move to the bigger community of Boise, Idaho.
All right, Dave Ehrenberg, State Attorney for Palm Beach County, Florida. Appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
So that's pretty interesting that, that they might move it to Boise because of how small Latta County is. Now, they've already announced that there is a public defender that has been appointed for him. So let me pull that up. So I wanted to go over something because I need to correct myself. I said I didn't think that genealogy, that DNA and me and all that, could have possibly been a part of nailing Bryan. Well, I'm wrong. Apparently, that's how they came up with his DNA originally. So I'm going to not go through this whole article here on CNN, but I'm going to go through what they actually stated about the DNA and the genealogy connection here. After it goes into talking about the victims, it says, meanwhile, DNA played a role in the investigation, sources have indicated to CNN, which we all knew that. The police have yet to confirm this information, but there's sources that are saying that DNA has been found. And that's one thing everyone seems to be able to agree on. Investigators focused on Kohberger as a suspect, in part after his DNA was matched to genetic material recovered at the home where the students were unalived. Two law enforcement sources briefed on the investigation have said. See, that's really interesting to me. Genetic genealogy techniques were used to connect Kohberger to unidentified DNA evidence, a source with knowledge of the case told CNN. The DNA was run through a public database to find potential family member matches, and subsequent investigative work by law enforcement led to his identification as the suspect, the source said. So again, I was wrong. They did use genetic genealogy, and that's pretty cool. I mean, so from what I understand, they put in, like a John Doe, and then they were trying to match this John Doe genetic material to anyone that may have been in the database, and obviously they were able to do that. Now, that doesn't mean they didn't use garbology. That doesn't mean they didn't grab his DNA while they were watching him, but that means that they were able to identify Bryan in this way. It says information about Kohberger's DNA and any prior relationship with the victims are both key pieces of evidence, Jackson told CNN on Monday. Number one, I'm looking for DNA, he said. Was his DNA in the residence? Is there any reason to explain the DNA? Is there a basis to know or understand why he would be there? Which leads me to number two, Jackson said. Is there any pre-existing relationship? Did he know them? If so, how? Well, as we can see, he should not have known Kaylee, Maddie, and Xana, although we have said that Maddie and Xana worked at the Mad Greek, so it's possible he saw them there. Families of the victims and law enforcement are going to go back and look to see if there's any connections between any of the victims and this defendant in this case. Shannon Gray, an attorney for Kaylee Gonzalez's family, told CNN. And we're going to be providing a list of any connections that we think are important to the Moscow police, Gray said. We would like to encourage the community to send any leads or information to the Moscow Police Department regarding any contacts or any information that they may have about the defendant and any of the victims in this case. So that's really cool. Like I said, there's so much stuff out, you guys, since he was arrested on Friday. And it's, no matter how much you read and go through, there's no way for you to read all of it. And not all of it is fact either, because we don't know what the probable cause affidavit says. Hopefully in the next 24 to 48 hours, we might have some information on that. But as of right now, we're just hearing from these sources that are close to the case and experts who are very knowledgeable in forensics, all that sort of stuff. But they don't know what law enforcement, what the state police, and what the FBI know. So, I mean, this is, to me, definitely, I thought that was pretty interesting. And again, I don't have a problem saying that I was wrong when I said the video where I said, like, I didn't believe it was like a DNA and me source, but obviously it was. And I think that's something that has been started to become, big and popular now. So if your DNA is in there, or people try to find long lost loved ones, now they can find out if your DNA is connected to someone in there, and then they're going to find out if your family member is related to you and you're the one that committed that crime. So it's definitely very, very good for law enforcement as well. They're stating that they still don't have a motive. The investigators also have yet to get any indication of why Kohberger allegedly carried out the stabbings. In the days since the arrest, there has been a heavy focus on Kohberger's study of criminal justice and criminology as a Washington State University student, a detail a former senior FBI profiler called very interesting. We have had other cases where offenders have been in areas of study that more or less prepare them to commit a crime. Mary Ellen O'Toole told CNN on Sunday, if he's guilty, Kohberger's area of study is not a result of cause and effect, she stressed, noting studying the criminal mind did not cause him to do this. So because he studied criminology and criminal law, that does not mean that caused him to become a criminal offender or an unaliver at all. He's interested in this, but the ideation of committing a violent crime had to already directly be there in order to motivate him to commit the crime, O'Toole said. So this was kind of a conduit to explore what he was already interested in doing. So obviously, he had something in mind already. He was already thinking he wanted to do some kind of something to somebody. Now, I still think that there's some crime or crimes out there that we're not yet aware of, because I find it hard to believe, personally, my opinion, that his first outing as a violent offender is to go out and unalive these 4 people. It's possible. Of course, anything's possible, but I just believe there's got to be something precursor to this. I think his study asking about the criminal mind definitely did lead to some of this. But also, was he the type did he kill animals? Did he do some other things when he was younger? His family seemed to think that this was so out of left field that there's no possible way that he's done this. But I think that there's got to be more to it. I don't think you don't just go out there and 28 years old go out there and decide you're gonna take a knife and just go stab and unalive a bunch of people. I think that's something that you've been thinking about, like they said, like this expert saying, you've thought about this for many, many years, a long time, and I think you've probably done something else. What that is, it may not be as obviously as violent as this, but I just find it hard to believe that this was his first real crime. It's the first real crime that we are aware of, but what aren't we aware of? So I think that all his DNA and all that sort of stuff, all this now forensic that they have, is going to help them be able to go back if they have any unsolved cases to see if Bryan Kohberger may have a tie to another case. It may not be an unaliving, it may just be an attack or what have you. So I'm really curious to see where that goes as well. So again, they're just talking about how again that he's a PhD student, which we knew. And now this is interesting here, how the suspect stayed free for 7 weeks. It's also unclear why Kohberger wasn't arrested until more than 6 weeks after the victims were found dead. Fry would not reveal Saturday when Kohberger came into law enforcement's radar, saying details in the case would be released in time. Kohberger went home to Pennsylvania for the holidays, Labar told CNN on Saturday, adding the suspect and his father, who accompanied his son on the cross-country drive, arrived around December 17th. A white Hyundai Elantra authorities had been looking for in connection with the unalivings was found at the Kohberger parents' house. The suspect drove the car to his parents' house, according to another law enforcement source, who told CNN, sometime right before Christmas, we were zeroing in on him being in or going to Pennsylvania. So they must have gotten that genealogy hit somewhere in that timing when he was heading to Pennsylvania. Man, I just can't wait to see how this all came together. An FBI surveillance team from the Philadelphia field office had been tracking him for 4 days in the area when he was arrested, according to 2 law enforcement sources briefed on the investigation. While Kohberger was being watched, investigators from the Moscow Police Department, the Idaho State Police, Homicide Bureau, and the FBI worked with prosecutors to develop sufficient probable cause to get the warrant. Once the arrest warrant was issued, the Pennsylvania State Police and the FBI made the arrest. And they confirmed today at the presser it was a raid. They didn't go out and say it completely, but windows were broken. So those alleged stories that his father answered the door at 1 or 3 a.m. are not true. They did a surprise attack on the home, and they specifically had to get that warrant to do it in the dark of night. Steve Gonzalez, Kaylee's father, said the family was asleep when Gray delivered the news of the arrest. I was very excited because it was a celebration of life, the same day we were doing that event. So that was the same day that they were going to do Kaylee and Maddie's celebration of life. So it honestly came at a good time. I mean, nothing about any of this is great for these families, but it was good news amongst all these horrific things that had been going on. And right now, I know Steve and the families are trying to see what connections, like they've said, what connections might they have had to their kids, and like same thing law enforcement is doing. I still don't think that Ethan was a target. Maybe not all the girls were, but I do think it has something to do with at least one or two of the girls that were unalived. Now the question is, which one or ones that we won't know, until we get further into this case. And if he decides to talk, I mean, I hope he does. I really do. But he's definitely a psychopathic kind of person. And seeing those eyes today and those shots, and I'm going to post them right here. I don't know if you guys saw them. Seeing the look in his eyes, it's just like, to me, it's like complete evil. It's like it makes you think of, like, I mean, we've been saying Jeffrey Dahmer, but I don't know. I mean, there's something about it. It's like there was like nothing in his eyes to me. So it's like the same thing when you see these parents, like these mothers of these children, that something happens to them and they truly don't care. Like we had, Quentin Simon's mother. They just have this blank look in their eyes to me. So I think that evil and just not caring, there's just looks, I think, in people's eyes that you can kind of see. Sometimes they're empty, sometimes they just look like they're blank, but they're definitely not a traditional look, that, in my opinion, at all. It's just something's going on in there and it's not good. All right, and one last bit for this one. Like I said, I'm not trying to cover too much at one time. There's just so much, and I don't want to make these videos like super long. But I thought this was a great one to end this one with. This is again News Nation. Father of Idaho victim. This is just the beginning. So let's see what Steve Gonzalez had to say.
But first, and new just into our newsroom, the father of one of the victims, Kaylee Gonzalez, breaking his silence on this arrest to senior national correspondent Brian Enton, who joins us live from Pennsylvania. So, Brian, what did he tell you?
Yeah, Nicole, I just wrapped up this conversation with Kaylee's dad, Stephen. Still heartbroken, but said initially when they learned about the arrest, they were the first to learn about it from police late Thursday night, that the arrest was going to happen. They felt some relief. They even felt joy to a certain extent. But now the feeling is just being overwhelmed, knowing that the court process is about to begin and that they are going to see the accused killer face to face.
Accused Idaho killer Bryan Kohberger could be in Idaho as early as tomorrow night after a hearing in Pennsylvania where Kohberger is expected not to fight his extradition.
There's going to be somebody there looking him in the face and letting him know that this isn't going away anytime soon. This is just the beginning.
Victim Kaylee Gonzalez's father, Steve, says they are looking for connections between Kohberger and Kaylee and the other victims.
I'm biased, but if you got to know my daughter, I would think it'd be impossible for you to hurt her. So I think a little bit of us all kind of felt like this was somebody who didn't have a chance to meet her, talk to her, get to know her, because she was a very likable person and she didn't have a mean bone in her body. So I think there's a little comfort in knowing that this person wasn't somebody she trusted and loved.
Kohberger's public defender tells News Nation in mid-December Bryan's dad drove back with him from Pullman, Washington to Monroe County, Pennsylvania in the white Hyundai Elantra police have been looking for. His attorney says Kohberger is eager to be exonerated.
I'm a reporter.
Get off my property. It's private property.
Kohberger's family did not answer when I went to their house where he was arrested, but released a statement through the public defender saying they are cooperating with law enforcement. And first and foremost, we care deeply for the 4 families who have lost their precious children. There are no words that can adequately express the sadness we feel, and we pray each day for them. We will continue to let the legal process unfold, and as a family, we will love and support our son and brother. Before moving to Washington State University to get his PhD, Kohberger got his master's from DeSales University in Pennsylvania. News Nation has obtained this photo of Kohberger taken during a group project at DeSales University in 2019. Students who studied with him tell News Nation they've been told to only talk to police because they could potentially be called as character witnesses in the case. They did say he was, quote, controlling during the group project.
What do you make, Steve, of the fact that, he was getting his PhD in criminal justice and had his master's in criminology, and sort of had this knowledge of the way the system works?
I feel like he definitely was into this type of thing. He had made a lifetime commitment to, wrapping himself into crime and solving crime and figuring out how people got caught, interviewing people, doing different things that a normal student wouldn't be so interested in. So I think he maybe got a little overconfident and didn't realize that there really is no perfect way to commit a crime.
Okay, so tomorrow Kohberger will be in court in the courthouse behind me here in Monroe County, Pennsylvania. We expect him to waive his extradition hearing, and he could be on his way back to Idaho as early as tomorrow afternoon.
So obviously he's not on his way tonight. According to the presser today, Pennsylvania did state that he would not be probably heading out today. So we'll see if he heads out tomorrow or if they're just pretty much going to keep everybody in the dark. They might keep everybody in the dark until he actually arrives in Idaho for his first appearance. So we'll have to see on that. But, it's heartbreaking for all these families. And, and Steve has been very spoken out, as well as his, one of his daughters and his wife. And I feel like that's him. He was standing up for his daughter, and as a parent, I mean, it's got to be something. You want this solved, and I know, he will definitely be there, and he's already said the first appearance he wants to be there to look him in the eye. So it's, that's probably going to be a scary thing. I think of the Delphi when Richard Allen made his first appearance, and you had the families of Abby and Libby that went there. They wanted to look at this man who's accused of doing this horrific crime and taking away their young daughters. So I can't imagine, how that's going to be for these families when they do finally face Bryan Kohberger in Idaho in court. So, it's probably going to be a lot of emotions like they're experiencing now. So, I just feel for him, and hopefully we'll have some more answers. Like I said, there's a lot of information coming out, but there's just so much we don't know that's the truth and what's speculation and all this stuff. Look at the story that came out from the Daily Mail yesterday. It was all about, that he was doing all these crazy things, yelling and telling the guards he was going to do things, and some girl came, some woman came out and said all this stuff, and that just didn't happen. So we all know, my opinion anyway is that if Bryan's psychotic, obviously, but they're saying that the truth was he was sitting in a cell, and I guess he was quote unquote behaving himself, because honestly, he's under the impression that he's going to be exonerated and he didn't do anything wrong. And it's like, I don't know if he's delusional or what the situation is, but the ball just is starting to get rolling. They arrested him last week, and today is the first real business day after the New Year's holiday. So I think that we're definitely going to have hopefully some more information, and as the days progress. As soon as she gets to Idaho, things are going to start to come out. Now, we don't want them to give us everything, even though we all are so curious. I mean, heck, I want to know what this connection was to the girls. I mean, I want to know, was he really stalking, Kaylee, Maddie, or Xana? I mean, it's like, was he in that house before? Why did he pick them? There's just so many questions that I have, and I know you guys have, and obviously the families have, but at the same time, they have to keep their integrity of this investigation. So I hope that we get what we can while keeping this case intact, and we'll see. So all I can say is that this guy's going to be in behind bars, hopefully for the rest of his life. And if he's truly the guy who did it, which they got the DNA, so he's I think he's kind of screwed. So, but all right, guys. Again, I'm going to be covering this one going forward. But let me know if there's any aspects of the case that you would prefer to me to cover more, because there's just so much of it. I'm thinking I'm going to focus more on, like the behavior. I mean, Joseph Morgan, like again, that I was talking about yesterday, and we showed a bit of him talking about the behaviors and why did he go to school? He from Pennsylvania. Why did he go from Pennsylvania, all the way to the other side of the country? Now, yeah, students do this all the time, but like he said, Washington State is not some hugely renowned university above some others in the criminology field for his PhD. So these are the kind of things that I'm interested in. I would like to know the, behaviors, all that sort of stuff. And what we normally, we're interested in the mind, I mean, it's obviously it's not normal. Something's awry in there. And I still want to know, what other secrets does he have? I believe he's got them. And, what are they? All right, guys, I want to thank you for checking out the video. And again, if you would hit the like button on the way out if you like the content that you're seeing. And I want to thank all of my subscribers. And of course, again, Happy New Year if you've just coming back in for the year. And hopefully, if you haven't subscribed yet, you'll hit that red button and the notification bell. That way you'll be notified whenever I post a new video. All right, y'all, have a great rest of the day. And most of all, stay safe.